Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us this evening and taking time. I know everybody's busy, and especially right now this time of year, but it really is there's no time like the present to speak about event safety. Now, about 3 months ago, we had the first one of these Zoom meetings with the MTRA, and it seemed to go over really well. Everybody liked it. Everybody was the feedback was very positive, and we thought maybe we'd hit on something, and it was decided then that hey, we ought to look into doing one on event safety. People had talked about okay, the first one on the trucks and all that was great. Uh, this is naturally the next. The progression in the series should be about event safety, and we get asked about this a lot, whether it's from people within the sport or even from people without or out, on the outside. For example, fair board people, arena people. Hey, why don't you put out some guidelines to help us so that you guys are around all this stuff all the time? You know, we don't. Where could we go to get some information, things that we like should be looking for? And that's the kind of the purpose of this is to call attention to some of these things. And then in light of recent events, it becomes even more important. Um, so we thought we had this scheduled a while back. We thought this is really important now of all times. And as the sport continues to evolve and the trucks get faster and faster and they cover so much ground so quickly, and again, as we've talked about before, we're not in venues that are specifically designed for us. We're not like at Daytona International Speedway where the NASCAR guys run, or at IRP where the on the NHRA drag strip where the drag racers run, or the Indy cars run at the Speedway or whatever. We're in an arena that's going to be a hockey rink tomorrow night, or a basketball court last night, or whatever, or maybe a football stadium or a racetrack or whatever. But likely the facility is not designed exactly for us. So we have to do the best we can to adapt to bring our massive vehicles into these facilities and perform, entertain the crowd, leave the facility just as we found it with no damage, and everybody had a great time. The fans, the crews, the racers, the track officials, nobody got hurt. Everybody enjoyed themselves. Hopefully, the truck owners made a little money, and we go on down the road. Um, to continue to do that safely, it takes every one of us. We've all seen things, we've all done things, we've all gotten away with things and thought, damn, I got away with one there. I shouldn't have been standing there, or that could have gone bad, or whatever. We've all seen that. And it's really important that we all work together to continue to let this sport that we like evolve. It's been around for a long time now. We want it to be around for a long time in the future. So, with that, I'll Marty has well, the entire board has really worked on this stuff to try to keep it going. But Marty has put in the yeoman's share of the work here and helped develop this program tonight. So he's going to take over and kind of tell us the format of how we're going to do this, and it's really important. Again, I appreciate everybody participation tonight. Thank you,
Well,
Marty.
I want to welcome everybody. As you know, or as Tim said, we are new to this technology, doing the meetings this way. So, please bear with us as we try to get through this. Hopefully, we don't have video and audio issues like we had last time. But before we get started, I want to allow a couple of minutes for people to get in. I'm sure it's a little early in some parts of the country, so we want to allow a little bit of time for people to be able to make the meeting, because the beginning is kind of important. As usual, I kind of want to do a little bit of a disclaimer at the beginning. I want to warn everybody that there will be points in this presentation that will be uncomfortable, and they're equally uncomfortable for us. And I want to reiterate the fact that none of this is directed at anyone. We're not singling out anyone. Our vehicles are in this presentation just as much as anyone else's. I think it's inevitable that some people are going to take offense because they're going to feel that somehow or another they're being singled out, and nothing could be further from the truth. The objective tonight is for us to observe mistakes, and be able to recognize where we can improve. We discussed before doing this meeting, we discussed this quite a bit, and there were a few different approaches we could take. As some of you know, we actually planned to do this meeting since December. When we did our tech school in December, we mentioned the fact that we wanted to do an event safety presentation coming up next, but we weren't sure when, because we know during first quarter everyone's busy, so it's a little more difficult for everybody to be able to make the meetings. And it just so happened that right when we were planning to do this, there was an incident that I'm sure most of you here tonight are aware of. We're not going to be referencing that has nothing directly to do with this presentation at all. But I think you will be able to see through some of the information that we're going to be presenting, some of the video and stuff, that there are clear applications. There are things that sometimes we become complacent over. We're all guilty of it, myself included. We very often, the board gets accused of being thinking that we're somehow perfect, or that we somehow feel that we can have the authority to be able to call people out, and that again is not our intent. Our intent is to help make the industry safer. That's the only objective here. It's not to hurt anyone's feelings. It's not to make enemies. I'm sure there will inevitably be people that will take offense, but just recognize that sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes we do things that we don't even recognize. And there are two different types of people that this can affect. There are those that make mistakes because they're simply unaware. They don't recognize the dangers. They don't have the foresight to be able to see the potential in certain scenarios. And those of us on the board, we've what we say cumulatively, we have over 100 years of experience in this, and we don't claim to be experts, but like Tim says, if we're not, we don't know who is. So we want to use that experience to be able to educate people and make them aware of the potential. I've said this in every meeting we've ever done, so most of you are probably tired of hearing it, but I believe that when something is possible, it inevitably will occur. It's just a matter of time. You roll the dice enough times, and eventually you roll snake eyes, no matter how skilled you might be at rolling dice. So I think with that said, I guess we can get started. This is going to be a series of video clips, and this first one, I put a lot of thought into this, and I was reluctant to do certain things, but I felt that this is important because it sets the stage for why we are here. It's definitely sets the stage for why I am here. So many of you are probably very well aware of this, but for those who are not, this might be a little bit of a surprise. So with that, let's go ahead. Let me see. We're 15 minutes in, so let's go ahead and get started.
2 fatal accidents, 1 week apart. The first, 6-year-old Sebastian Heisey, hit by flying debris in Tacoma, Washington.
Why did this happen? It's a question that keeps playing in my head over and over and over. I, thought that we were doing something fun for the family.
The truck was doing donuts when a frisbee-sized piece of metal broke off the truck and flew 40 feet into...
Sorry about that.
the stands.
We look at safety at every event. Obviously, there's pieces that come off these junk cars, and we watch where they go. We watch where the crowd is in relation to the monster trucks, obviously.
The second was the same man you just saw. He was killed when he stepped in front of a monster truck in Madison, Wisconsin. George Eisenhart Jr. was a 16-year veteran of the monster truck scene.
The truck was doing what it was supposed to do, and they just don't have any explanation why the staff member was at that spot at that time.
Eisenhart was owner and president of Image Productions, which puts on monster truck shows. And the driver, who's been driving for over 20 years, is not expected to be charged. Fans are stunned.
Everybody was just shocked. And then all the kids were standing there, and it was terrible. They brought the stretcher out and stuff, and then the guy was like, "Show's over, folks." And the ambulance was there within, like, EMTs were out there in about 2 minutes.
It's just in life that accidents do happen, and it's unfortunate.
Preliminary police investigations show all safety precautions were taken in both situations, but the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration will also investigate.
This is our 16th year, and I wish I had a big piece of wood to knock on right now, but we have not had an incident besides a gal slipping in the aisleway at another location.
Words that seem eerily prophetic. Maggie Schneider, CNN, Atlanta.
Obviously, George was our friend, and it's difficult to watch that, but I wanted everyone to recognize that we could try to candy coat this and pretend that we aren't discussing issues of life or death, or we could be honest and show what can happen when things go wrong. You know, there was a lot of thought put into whether we should include some of these things or not, but the truth of the matter is that we need people to take this seriously. So since in the interest of time, let's keep moving forward.
3 people have been killed in the Netherlands during a stunt show, including a child. A giant pickup truck span out of control in the Dutch city of Haaksbergen. The local mayor said at least a dozen people were injured, 5 of them seriously. One of the victims said, "They need to find a bigger location, somewhere outside the town centre where there's more space. It could have driven straight into the supermarket or the bank." The so-called monster truck was driving over a row of cars when it appeared to lose control. It ploughed over safety barriers into the crowd. Local helicopter ambulances flew in from around the region, including from neighbouring Germany. One of the organisers speculated that the truck's accelerator became stuck or its brakes failed.
I'm sure everyone noticed how close the spectators were, and they were behind bicycle rack.
8 spectators, including 4 young children, were killed and around 80 other people injured when a monster truck ran out of control and ploughed into the crowd at an air show in northern Mexico on Sunday. The accident occurred when the monster truck, with tyres measuring 1.5 meters tall, suddenly veered to the right after making a second run over 2 cars during a performance at an air show in Chihuahua. The tragic events that followed were captured on film by several members of the audience. The driver said in a statement that he lost consciousness as the truck bounced violently upon impact with the ground, while several witnesses recalled seeing the driver's helmet knocked off by the impact. An investigation is looking into whether a mechanical fault caused the truck to accelerate uncontrollably. A breath test administered at the site detected alcohol on the driver's breath. Of the dozens injured, 12 people remain in intensive care, with 4 in critical condition. Local authorities are now looking into whether safety regulations had been correctly enforced at the event.
So in these events, the placement of the spectators had a direct effect on that. Like these last 2 incidents could have been prevented had the spectators not been placed in the line of, of the truck, directly in line with the truck. So given that, looking at things from that perspective, you can understand the problem with this. And again, we're not here to blame anyone, or the point here is to look at these situations objectively and recognize the potential for disaster there. K barriers and junk cars parked in the end with floor seating on a slick concrete floor. That's those are not going to stop a truck. Just imagine a situation like that where there's a stuck throttle. Even if the truck was shut off, it could slide into the K barriers and knock them into the crowd. There's any number of things that could have gone wrong in that scenario. We failed to mention this at the beginning, and this is something that we will post in other places as well. But we just published a new set of event safety recommendations. This is something we worked on a little bit. We discussed it quite a bit. We wanted to be sure that we were covering as many of the potential areas of, that we see are more often contributing factors to some of the incidents that we see. And as we mentioned in the last meeting, we believe that the MTRA has done a very good job over the past 40 years to develop safety equipment for the vehicle. But the safest truck in the world is not safe when it's placed in an unsafe environment. So, we believe that although we do not, the MTRA does not have jurisdiction over events such as these, all we can do is make recommendations. We can lead the horse to water, but we can't make it drink. We are not promoters. This is not within our purview, but we are veterans of the industry, and we know the performer side of the equation. So we feel that we can make recommendations for what we believe should be in place to advance the most safety possible. Nothing will ever be 100% foolproof. That's why it takes layers of things to try to make these things as safe, these events as safe as possible. Layers that entail both the vehicle and the venue and the personnel, each doing their part to where if one item fails, the next thing catches it. And we'll go over that in some of the other videos, and we can analyze some of the things that happened that may have been contributing factors. And we mentioned the most recent incident that I think brought a lot of attention to this issue. And like everyone, we pray for the individual involved. We pray for his recovery, and at the same time, we also need to pray for the wisdom and the capacity to do something to prevent it from happening in the future. In other words, our focus needs to extend into the future, because without action, these type of things will happen again.
With all the video and stuff that's out there nowadays, it's not uncommon for during an event weekend for the board to get videos and discuss them. Hey, this just happened. We just saw this at this event, or so-and-so sent us this, or whether it's fans or other racers, or, hey, you guys should be aware of this. This just happened. And this is constantly a work in progress. Okay, maybe somebody needs to tell these guys this isn't a good idea. We need to change things. But I wish the MTRA had more of an iron fist that we could rule with, but we can't. We can try to get the information out there and hope that, like he said, lead the horse to water. But anyway, it's a constant work. It happens almost weekly when we see something that the board's discussing these things.
One of the big failings that we see, like Tim said, we get barraged with videos and pictures and things almost every weekend, especially during first quarter, of things that happen. Hey, did you see this? Are you aware of this and everything? And we're like, yeah, we're aware of a lot of these things, but there's only so much we can do. And we can try to ask people to recognize these situations and call them out when they see them. And again, sometimes there are errors made simply because no one recognized that there was
And
an
also,
issue.
it's not always monster trucks. We might get something from a sprint car race, or I remember something came through with, hey, check this, look at this, and watch what happened. Mega trucks, all kinds of different things that get brought to the board's attention that people think, well-meaning people think, hey, what about this? Is this of value to you? And we appreciate that.
Yeah, and every once in a while, those messages will be couched in a way that is, why aren't you doing something to stop this or prevent this? And it's very hard to get people to understand that we don't have the leverage to make that happen as much as we would like to. There is only so much we can do. Our responsibility, our primary responsibility is to develop components and measures to make the vehicles as safe as possible. But the venues themselves and the events themselves are really outside of our purview. But we would like to do what we can to advance the concepts that we will be discussing tonight. And one thing I want to point out, especially in this, is that very often, and I would say in most cases, in most of the videos that you're going to see tonight, the drivers had no fault in most of these things. A lot of times they're mechanical failures or, issues with visibility and things which we recognize, which is exactly why we have to put these other protocols in place to prevent injuries or incidents from occurring as a result of technological failures. And this is one, and I know there was a lot of controversy over this because the knee-jerk reaction was immediately to blame the driver. And then when we pointed out that had safety holes been in place, this really wouldn't have been an issue. This was not an unusual incident other than the fact that there were no safety barriers or safety holes in place. Let me go ahead and start that. This is another angle.
Holy fucking shit. Yeah, we're good, buddy. All right, it's all good.
So disaster was narrowly avoided there. And again, I believe that had there been safety holes in place, I don't think that would have been nearly as big of a concern. In other words, it wouldn't even have been a blip on the radar. And here's an example. This is a more serious incident where the safety holes were in place and it's a non-issue. And I say non-issue in terms of endangering the spectators. Obviously, it's an issue of building damage and other things. But again, our main focus tonight is protecting everyone, making sure. And that, when I say everyone, that includes event staff, as well as spectators. This is another angle of that same incident. In spite of an elevated floor, note how many rows that the truck got up into the seats. We worked on this for a little bit because this is safety is a work in progress. You're never like, okay, we've solved everything. New incidents occur that bring new information to light, so you have to make adjustments to things that you thought were already figured out. And a big challenge, I guess we should have probably started with this from the very beginning, but a big challenge to trying to develop protocols for this is that monster trucks are really unique in that they perform in such a wide variety of venues. Everything from, a dealership to an NFL football stadium or Olympic stadium and everything in between. You're in front of 60,000 people one week, and then you're in front of 300 people the next weekend. And every one of those has an entirely different arrangement where the spectators are situated. So it's really important for us to try to create our recommendations in a broad sense, but at that point, it is incumbent upon the event coordinators to tailor those to the individual venues on a week by week basis, because they will be different from one week to the next. Here is a situation where you have floor seating and with K barriers. And this is just to illustrate again how the unpredictability of these type of things. Note the truck's, pretty far to the center of the track.
Oh shit! Oh my God!
And that was a slow maneuver, but it just illustrates how it doesn't take a lot for the truck to get out of the lane. So we have to adjust for the length, the wheelbase, and the tilt, the tipping point, at what point it tipped over. All these things are factors, and we kind of have developed a starting point, which is, well, first we recommend that we use elevated seating at all venues, and then on top of that, a buffer zone from the race, from the performance lanes to the barriers, and then safety holds from the barriers to the spectators. And that safety hold area is what we've come up with is 30 feet minus the elevation. So let's say you have a 5-foot wall. You would be 30 feet minus the 5 feet. So 5 feet up and 25 feet worth of rows in order to achieve that buffer zone. And that's sort of, you'll see that in a minute, but that's sort of calculated based on the truck tipping over, since most trucks are roughly 20 feet long. Is where we're sort of getting a number to at least start from. And some of the large promoters may have much better data on that. If they've got a lot of experience in that kind of thing and have better numbers, but we had to have a number to start from. There you can see that setback. See, but having floor seating is a big concern, and as you'll see as we get further into that. Here's another example of where you do everything right. You see how that ratio, that setback plus the vertical measure, elevation, gives you a safety zone that even when the truck tips over, there's still a buffer. It's not getting into the crowd. There's enough room there. These are just examples of both extremes, where the safety measures were in place and safety measures were not in place. And there's a drastic difference between the two. You see that the 20 foot, estimating the length of that 20 feet minus the elevation, and then plus the safety hold, still gave several feet from the vehicle to the seating. And here's the other extreme. That chicken wire there fencing isn't going to do anything to stop tire or vehicle from getting through there. To notice, if you can see, our picture here is a little bit obstructed, but you can see the cap of the person sitting right there at the front row. Their feet are right up against that fence. Here's a yet another one, another example of unpredictability. It's difficult to see a little. I'm not sure if everybody sees this the same way I do, but at this point here, you notice that security is pulling a child away from the fence right there. See that? Right about where that thing hit. That's why it's so important to have that buffer. There's another example. Even the 4 feet or so, 3 to 4 feet, where the track was, the spectator area was elevated, was not sufficient to stop the vehicle, even with the concrete area. Thank God we had that buffer. They had that buffer there, and note that the racing lanes were not right up against the fence either. They had the proper setback there, but it's just that unpredictability and the fact that that fencing is really not sufficient to prevent, or to restrain the truck from getting into that area. So when we see things like that, and then we recognize the potential, and then we see situations like this where look at how close everyone is. There's no buffer there. So it's then we got situations that are yet worse. You have virtually nothing separating the crowd from the vehicles. I mean, that little chain link fence isn't going to do anything. And then, things that seem rather insignificant. This is a little slow crush, just a little wheelie that seems like no big deal. Their truck is very much in control. That's all it takes is just a little twist, broken axle shaft or locker unlocks or something. So you can imagine in the previous track that we just looked at where people were seated right there. Same thing, same situation. It's not hard to see how easily things like that could go bad, really bad. And that, unfortunately, that's one of those things. I was having a conversation with somebody that a friend of mine that doesn't know very much about the monster truck industry at all, and I was trying to convey some of these concepts to him, and I mentioned that to him, that there are these phrases that we have in our industry that get repeated quite often, and and there's a few like drive accordingly, and the other one that we hear far too often is, boy, that could have gone really bad. We hear that way too often. And I think we're seeing lots of examples of that, where disaster was just miraculously avoided. That one had the safety holes perfectly in place. That from that aspect, it was a safe situation. The mistake there was where the event staff was placed. They had a table sitting there where I don't know if that's the announcer or just a scorekeeper or something, but they had to jump out of the way, and the truck just about hit the table right there. Fortunately, they had a couple of rows of safety hold there, and did have the buffer zone between the performance lanes and the wall. But you see how close it got, so that's why it's so important to have those buffers there in place. That at some events they're not present, and I think it's here's another example where you've got your safety hold in place. And there was even a concrete barrier there that got damaged. So, I mean, I'm sort of beating a dead horse here, but I'm trying to really hammer home the importance of having these buffer zones and the safety holds and, structural walls in place. That was right into the structural wall. Here's another perspective of that.
Oh my God!
And, a lot of times at these, fair shows and stuff, you have different situations where on top of having fairly limited buffers, you have places of people in bad areas. Listen to the throttle. Fortunately, those big concrete barriers were there because the truck was headed towards the spectator area. These are rather mundane scenarios. These aren't like spectacular crashes or anything. Again, when the safety measures are in place, they're not a big deal other than, the building damage and those kind of things. But at least the individuals involved, the spectators and the track personnel are safe. You can see by how close it came to that section above the tunnel. This sort of illustrates that ratio that we were talking about, how depending on how tall the wall is, the safety holds need to be deeper the lower the wall is, because we have to figure the rotation of the vehicle, how far up the stands can it get. And, ideally, we have discussions among the board members, and we have differences of opinion on certain things. Sometimes some of us are more idealist, and other times, some of us will be more realistic. And, I was really pushing for higher walls for other reasons that we're going to get to in a minute. And we, others were saying, look, like we got to be realistic that that's not always going to be possible. In some venues, the walls are low, or, sometimes more often than not, we see a lot of events through the summer that are floor seating. So we, how do we make the best of a situation like that? And You know, we just had to make a judgment call in some areas and say, you know what, that maybe we've outgrown certain venues. And I know that that's going to be an unpopular opinion, but if we want this industry to be around for a long time, I think we're going to have to recognize that some of these venues that are shows are being put on and are just not safe. And there's almost no way to make them safe. You know, you've got, like I said, that term drive accordingly, but that doesn't always account for mechanical failure. And that's why there's the pictures of why these are so important. Because more often than not, it's the kids that are up against these barriers, not the adults. And, you know, we saw in that one video that, you know, the security ran up and grabbed the kid. You know, the kid could have been hurt. You know, it's not always the truck that has to hurt you. Even the concrete can hurt you. That thing gets, you know, shredded into pieces. It can do damage of its own. So we need to be conscious of that. So before we move into this next segment, Tim, or does anybody have any comments they want to add? And
yeah, well done. I mean, you're making some very good points.
Okay, we do have you know, this chat going, and we do want to field some questions. And we were debating whether to do this as we went along or whether to save it all kind of for the end. And I think since we got off to a rough start and started a little late, I think it's probably best we kind of move through this, and then we can go back as the questions come in, we can review those and refer back to different parts of the presentation to refresh everybody's memory, so that, you know, the things that are relevant to the questions. Okay. Direction of travel. This is another very big area of concern. Very good example.
Oh God. Oh. Oh. There goes the tire. Oh my. Almost hit a car.
Our friend Dave, who we just lost. But the primary issue with this, or the thing that was a concern here, is that this was a Chicago style race course. And we were fortunate that the wheel loss was when it was going that direction, because if the truck had been going the other way when the wheel came off, that's what was on the other end of the track. So you could see that tire would have gone right through the stands. Another example. It's right through the midway. There was a child that was shoved out of the way by a security guard or something, and I believe he suffered minor injuries, but I mean, it's virtually a miracle that no one was hurt in this incident.
Oh shit! Move out of the fucking way! Oh my God!
How fortunate was it that the tire went through the only area where people weren't sitting? Had it gone a little bit more that way, or a little more to the left, or a little more to the right, it would have gotten into the stands. So you could see the vehicle was not going directly at the spectators, but the unpredictability of once the tire is detached, which way is it going to go? And with floor seating and bicycle rack, that's not going to do very much to stop that. And for those that think that they could get out of the way in a situation like that, there's another perspective on that. In the chaos of the moment, with people trying to run in every direction, it's not always easy to know. And you don't know where the tire is going to end up either, because every time it hits something, it changes direction or bounces or anything. So, we can't emphasize enough that the direction of travel is a major, major concern. Here is a very slow move that should not have hurt anything, but sometimes, see, we very often will get people saying, well, in that drive accordingly situation, where very often you will find that a vehicle has damage that is not known. It may have been suffered the week before, and it's just hanging on, and it comes apart at the wrong time. Planetary is still in there, so that was clearly a broken spindle or something. It wasn't lug nuts or anything that came off there. So unfortunately, the vehicle wasn't going very fast, and there was about a 5-foot wall there. But had the truck been going any faster, or had there been something else, that tire could have very easily have ended up in the stands because the vehicle was going towards the spectators. And again, it's not anything that the driver did wrong. It's strictly the situation that the vehicle is placed within. And here's a situation, this involved some MTRA members that were on site. And when they arrived, they refused to run because of the way the track was laid out. And there was a lot of discussion, and the show was not going to go off, and it was, it turned into a big debate. And finally it was decided that, it was that situation, that drive accordingly situation. And the vehicles were not going to hit the obstacles with any momentum going towards the stands. They were going to hit momentum the other way, but it's just to illustrate, this is making the best of a bad situation. In an ideal world, the drivers would have packed up and left. But we know that sometimes when teams that have spent several $1,000s in fuel to travel to an event and things, it's not realistic to expect them to always stick to their guns and pack up and go home. So it would be much better if we knew that the venues were going to cooperate and that the placements are going to be safe enough. He's using restraint coming towards the stands, but still, again, you have that situation where there might have been a mechanical failure or, a stuck throttle. There's any number of things where, yes, I'm sure that because of the sensitivity of the situation, I would like to believe that everybody was being hyper alert with the RII, and the driver was definitely being cautious about, going in that direction and all. But again, that's just not an ideal situation.
All right, here we go. Climb up, Adam, and stream up the line.
In the mechanical restraint or the wheel restraint system was part of our discussion on the vehicle tech. So we're not going to get into that today, but we're just trying to illustrate how even when you have the safety components in place, it's still no guarantee. That's why we say that there needs to be layers of protection. And there was one other thing I want to point out here at the beginning. There was another failing there, and that is right here. We'll be getting into this more, but notice the flag. That's something we're going to get into in just a minute. Here's another scenario. There's a walkway at the far end of the track, or where the spectators cross from one side to the other, and all the porta potties are on that end. That could have been really, really bad. Throttle hung. That's an issue we discussed in the tech school. The cause of that, but again, without having, fortunately, there was a long run out there. There was some pretty, good sized concrete barriers there, but even then, had people been walking through that corridor there, still could have been bad, and much less, the people sit in the porta potty. Another example. You'd say, well, he's got the truck under control there, right? Even though he got quite a bit of air going towards the stands, you've got people sitting behind, jersey barriers and chain link fence at ground level, and the truck is coming towards them. And you see, when everything is working right, it's not a problem. But then you have this situation from this past weekend, same vehicle, the far lane. Where there was a mechanical failure with the braking system, and it went through a fence. So now, had that failure happened at the other event, what would have happened?
POV, monster truck show gone wrong, almost got squished.
And then you have the added thing, of course, social media picks all this stuff up and it ends up plastered everywhere, which isn't a good look, but same thing, what is the potential for disaster in that picture right there? Now, imagine, even though that's a very slow pop and drop type situation, but you have a broken spindle or something, stuck throttle, how much reaction time is there remaining there? Even somebody that's fast with an RII, how quick are they going to shut them off? Wheel breaks off. Is it going to get into the crowd? And you have people on these mobile grandstands within these railings, so they're not all going to get out at the same time. They're going to be tripping over each other and everything. It's just not a good situation. Then you add grass on top of situations like that. Again, bike rack. Same here. This is somewhat humorous. I put this in here because it illustrates karma in video. Anybody who's been to tech school has seen this many times. It's everybody's favorite video. This was the head of a bunch of mud bog organization or mud racer organization, and they were at this event and they were told not to park at the end of the track, and they refused to move. This guy said, no, we are here all the time and we're not moving. And this was the result. It's him commenting.
Oh, are you kidding me? Oh. What the fuck?
like I said, that's, there's a little bit of, poetic humor in that, but the fact of the matter is situations like that are quite dangerous. It went over, I mean, you see how even at a slow roll, it went right over the trailer, right over the cab of the truck, and right. So it's very, very important that we do what we can to not have vehicles traveling in the direction of spectators under throttle. And this is specified in this safety, event safety recommendations that we made. There are various areas that it touches on. And now we're getting to probably the one at the top of everybody's minds right now is staff and crew placement. And this is a tough one. This is going to be uncomfortable, but we need this in order to recognize the severity of this issue. Left-hand side of the screen.
Friday night's monster truck show at JPJ turned ugly just minutes into the event when the red truck called the Crush Station, seen on the bottom of your screen, ran over the show's MC. Sean Metcalf was sitting several rows back from the floor and couldn't believe what he was watching.
What we saw was the truck jump out and basically didn't even see him and ran completely over top of him. Pretty much his whole body went under the wheel of the truck.
The announcer, identified as Ken Dickinson of Lyndhurst, was taken immediately to UVA Medical Center. University police declined to go on camera, but Lieutenant Melissa Fielding released this statement about the accident, saying, "It was almost like a perfect storm. It's hard for me to tell you why the announcer was standing where he was. All of the elements were there for an unplanned incident. The driver was not in a place where he could see the announcer because the truck's visibility was very limited." Metcalf says JPJ management should make safety a top priority if it ever wants to host such an event again.
What they should do is make some changes and implement a safety program, get some help from the outside or whatever to come in to come up with some solutions and ideas that would prevent it for future problems.
There were a few factors involved in that may not be apparent to the untrained eye. Again, in this situation at the time, I know that there were, immediately fingers were pointed at the driver, but people fail to recognize the fact that in addition to limited visibility, for those that have never actually sat in the cab of the truck, you know that your visibility starts pretty far out. And this particular truck has a body style that is even more obstructive than normal because it's got protrusions at the front that kind of restrict some visibility. And there are many trucks like that today. But realistically, on top of that, he's not expecting there to be somebody on the track. There shouldn't be. And then beyond that, he's sitting in the vehicle, and I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but he's sitting in the vehicle and he's looking at the guy off to his right, and he's waiting for hand signals. They're telling him to hold, and he's just looking at him. And when he gets the go ahead to drive out, his eyes are to the right, looking at him, at the track official, not looking for obstructions in front. It's the responsibility of that guy as well as the people on the RIIs to be monitoring the situation. Now, there's layers here. It's multiple people are supposed to be keeping an eye out, recognizing the fact that the driver's got a lot going on. He's sitting there in a very loud vehicle with lots of vibration, and his adrenaline's up. He's about to go out and perform. He's waiting for the signal. So it's so important that we reduce that stress level. We reduce the potential problems by keeping the track clear. There should not be anybody on the floor ever when a vehicle is about to move. Another scenario we see far too common, but this is too often, but this is especially bad. Note the flagman in the middle. So you have a guy out on the floor. That's already a problem right there, because trucks don't always go straight when they hit obstacles, right? He's behind that stack of cars, so the truck going in that direction may not even be able to see him. Then he runs across the track, right where runs across the racing lane through the dust, where it's very unlikely that that driver even knew he was there, that driver that's coming around. The potential for disaster here was tremendous. Similar situation, just without him running across the track. Flag man in the center of the truck. You know, in an ideal world, you'd say there wasn't a problem there, but the fact of the matter is the trucks get crossed up a lot. Sometimes the rear steer doesn't return, or it comes back slow, or they slightly spin out and they end up missing the cars or partially hitting the cars. And again, if it can happen, it eventually will. Notice the truck went over the mound that the guy was standing on, that the flagman was standing on. He's looking at the other truck and didn't even see this one coming from behind him. Notice there was somebody walking behind the truck right there. Standing off to the side is not good enough. We've seen it over and over again. It's not good enough. We have $250,000 vehicles racing against each other, and we're relying on a flag man. I mean, I think that the technology obviously exists to be able to eliminate that as an issue. You know, a couple of lights. I mean, most of this stuff, I mean, we're in the entertainment business. We're not in the racing business. Let's be honest. Realistically, in a situation like that, let's say, oh, the lights failed, we don't have lights or anything. So stage, and when you hear the other guy take off, you go. In other words, don't put somebody's life at risk to do this. It's just not worth it. And this is all the time.
Listen to me, father or son.
Trucks were getting crossed up, and he's trying to look. He can't see both ways at the same time. Again, the potential for disaster was obvious. Here, the presence of mind of the driver is what saved this one. Guy sitting in the equipment there, and fortunately the driver had the presence of mind, the situational awareness to recognize there was something there, and got on the brakes and he was prepared to roll the truck to not run into something. But bottom line, that piece of equipment shouldn't have been there. The guy, even if it was, the guy should not have been sitting in that vehicle. Again, the unpredictability, no audio on this one, but see that guy run out of the way. Standing there off to the side. Never thought the truck would make a 90-degree turn there. But it happens. And that was a slow maneuver. Again, slow maneuver and still almost went to the stage. This is the emergency staff on site. That emergency staff sitting on four-wheelers and everything right there. Tire went right between them. Here you have a situation with a big floor and track personnel sitting on a four-wheeler at a pretty significant distance from the track. And even that wasn't good enough. Fact of the matter is that in a lot of these situations, the driver is the safest one out there. It's the people working around the vehicles that are in the most danger. So it's important that we remind them that not to place themselves, because maybe they have too much trust or they become complacent, not to place themselves in positions where they are in danger and don't even recognize it. And then another, major factor is very often people aren't wearing high vis. Having high visibility clothing is really important. I know that we want to look good when we're out in front of, the spectators, and having like all black crew uniforms and stuff is not always a great idea without having some embellishment, something that makes it stand out, where drivers and other people, even not just drivers, but the personnel operating the RII needs to be able to see. In case a vehicle gets off track, they recognize, oh, there's somebody standing there. I need to shut the truck off. Another one of those unexpected ones. See that? That happens kind of fast, but you notice that there was someone standing on the side of the track where the truck got crossed up a little bit. And the driver saw that. He had the presence of mind to recognize there was somebody there and got on the brakes. So the fact that this guy was standing out on the track caused that wreck, caused the driver to have to sacrifice the truck to not endanger him. There's no reason for that person to have been there. In a situation like that, again, it looks like, well, there's no big deal there. Well, but what about all those people that are sitting underneath the stands there on the floor, on concrete? The truck could have slid in there. All sorts of things could have happened. In other words, it's just not safe to be on the floor when a truck is performing. I'm trying not to come across as overblowing the situations, but again, conscious of these other instances where there were similar scenarios that ended up in very near misses or accidents. We have to recognize the potential. See that guy standing by the equipment there, and he never thought the truck would cross the track that far and get over the railing. Here you have the announcers and everybody up on the stage. Truck almost went up on the stage. People sitting on cars right behind that, those, what are they, 4x8 sheets of plywood on a chain link fence. See how far that tire went. The truck was going slow, and the tire wasn't moving at a lot of speed, but now put that closer to the stands, and see how that gets worse. You have crews down there, and here's, for some of you are probably not old enough to remember this, but this was back in 1992, and this is what started to change. This incident spurred a lot of changes in our industry because it opened a lot of eyes to the potential of how seemingly unlikely things can happen. Another angle. Oh, the people that were sitting there that was the pit area. The people that were sitting on the Jersey barriers and standing under the trucks there didn't even see the truck coming because it crossed behind the other truck. They couldn't see it. They were probably looking at the truck in the near lane and never even noticed the one in the other lane had turned towards them. And the minute the near truck crossed, that thing popped out. They had no time to react. I had several friends that were standing right there, and they said they had no time to react. They just fell down and went under the front axle is all they could do. And obviously, those of you know that resulted in a fatality. This isn't a monster truck, but I thought this was a good video to show, not only because it shows the things that can happen, but, they're not all that different than in terms of the engines and things. That the same failure could happen on a monster truck, but the statement at the end here, I think, is worth noting.
This is a shutdown area. Everybody get out, find another location. Not going to take another chance like that. We just dodged the bullet. Thank God Everybody got out of the way.
So I think that is one of the biggest issues at hand. Is we have more often than not staff in areas they should not be. It's not always crews. You know, I know a lot of times people will they won't allow the crews to be on the floor while trucks are performing everything, but sometimes they forget about the club help or the other track officials, and sometimes they think it's their job, their position is to stand out there and direct trucks or be a flag man but we've moved past that. We need to develop better methods of doing this, of managing the truck, the flow of trucks on and off the floor, staging trucks, flagging, giving the green light, red lights for the trucks. There are better ways out there. There's no reason to be seeing these kind of things happening today, this past weekend even. So, sorry, I'm coming across as sounding irritated, but bottom line, I know these people know better. And that's, I think that, I said that there are two different types of people. There are those that are unaware of the dangers, and then there are those that have been around long enough. They should be very well aware of these things, but they just maybe they have other priorities, let's say. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to bring this to their attention and make them aware that no, these things shouldn't be happening. We care for this industry too much to allow these kind of things to happen that could endanger this. There are some large companies that would survive a major incident, but a lot of the small companies would not because necessarily they were directly involved, but because it becomes impossible to put on events in certain buildings. Let's say that, the building associations decide we can't have this. There was a major incident. It's not worth the risk, and we're no longer going to allow these things to perform in our buildings. Or fair boards start doing this, or the insurance companies say, we're not insuring these things anymore. Right? So, beyond the preservation of, life and preventing injury, we also want to protect the industry itself from itself. So I think we need to be proactive, but also constructive. I see this, and just because we don't comment doesn't mean that we're not always watching. We watch all social media for anything related to events every week. And we see a lot of sometimes, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's uninformed criticism, where maybe the blame, first of all, there's blame, and then oftentimes the blame is not actually on the responsible party. They're not aware of all the different aspects involved in a lot of these situations, and sometimes it's not always as simple as it might seem on the surface. And as to who truly was responsible for ensuring that this situation didn't present itself. So I urge people to be proactive, but at the same time be constructive, not be accusatory and or overblow a situation or anything, but do it. If you're going to make note of something publicly, it's best that it's done in a positive manner. Or if you're unsure of the situation, by all means, all of us are all the board is readily available. Our contact information is readily available. We can be messaged. We can be reached a number of different ways. Send it to us. A lot of times we're already aware of it or becoming aware of it. Sometimes we'll all of a sudden get 10 messages from different people. We know something serious happened. But like I said, I think it's important that we all try to work together and not be overly divisive about these things. And I think that if we all work together, I think we can make a difference. I think we can truly change the way that a lot of these events are being run. This isn't reinventing the wheel. These are fairly minor changes that have a significant effect on the safety aspect of the events. Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Well said. I mean, it's absolutely right. As you say, sometimes people don't know any better. Sometimes they getting on there and just ranting on social media or look how stupid these guys are or whatever. That's not constructive. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to help anybody. Not going to help anything. But get a hold of one of us if you see something. What do I need to do here? How do I need to report this? This is what I saw. I know this isn't right. And we'll try to help steer you in the right direction and get the right information to the right people's hands to get it stopped for tomorrow night or whatever the case may be. But I think this has been a very good presentation. Marty did a very good job of rounding up a lot of these videos and editing them together so that we can all learn from them and see. I know my team does a lot of Monster Jam stuff during the year, and they've made it even more restrictive of people being in tunnels and in vomitories and other situations. They got cameras everywhere watching people, and if they see somebody that shouldn't be somewhere, they'll make sure to get with those people, and not in an accusatory way, but just hey, you shouldn't be here. You don't. You absolutely, this is a bad situation. We don't want to catch you in this location again. Just making people aware. Maybe they didn't even realize how many times did we see in these examples where people were completely unaware of what was going on around them because you just can't see. Nobody can see all the way around them and be aware of what's going on 360 degrees around them. It's just impossible. And the noise and the excitement and all the stuff going on, and especially spectators that aren't used to going and don't see them every week or every day like we do, and they're there and they're completely mesmerized. They're oblivious. They're walking around, well, look at this and look at this, and their minds blown with all the cool stuff that's going on, and they don't even realize that they could be in a bad situation. Well done, Marty.
Thank you. So we've covered a few aspects of the layout of how the event should be, or should I say the shortcomings of how some events are being laid out in terms of safety holds and direction of travel and these kind of things. Now we're going to move into a slightly different aspect. And this is situational awareness. We're all guilty of this at times. We go into a venue and we have a lot to do. There may be pressing issues on the vehicle that need to be repaired, or even sometimes as simple as, oh, we got to get the truck cleaned up for pit party and these kind of things. So we've got a million things going on all the time. But one thing that's very important, and I know drivers are good about going out and looking at the track and they say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But situational awareness is something that also needs to be taken into account in terms of recognizing potential hazards on the track or in the vicinity of the track that sometimes we just don't see. I've had that issue myself in the past, having close calls with equipment and things that were on the track that I didn't realize were as close to the racing lanes as I thought, and things like that. So we're going to see some examples of that. And again, we're not saying that these drivers did anything wrong. We're merely trying to show how it's important to walk the track and not just look at the track, but look at the surroundings and all the things that could be a potential hazard if the truck gets upset or something goes wrong. Obviously, that could have been really serious. Rubber tires are what saved them there. A little hard to see what happened there, but there was actually the lights had a cable that ran across the track. And the driver didn't realize that it was there, that it was in the way. The truck actually hit it and took it down, shut the lights off in the arena. Serious building damage. This is a different kind of awareness. That. How hard would it have been to hit a kid in the eye with those mud clods or anything? I don't know how he wasn't shut off. I mean, I recognize that the driver may have been unaware that this was happening, but the people around him should have seen that and shut the truck off immediately as soon as they saw things going into the stands. And you never know, there could be a rock, there could be a piece of a junk car, and they get sent and that could seriously injure something. I mean, that has happened. We've had debris from the track end up in the stands and cause injury. So we're running a little long on time because we got a late start. So I'm going to kind of move through this a little bit quickly. But another issue that we need to consider, and I think this is something that especially at some of the smaller events and stuff that we see, the lack of preparedness for unforeseen circumstance. It's very important that events always have EMTs on site, that the track personnel is qualified to respond when there's incidents. Also, that you don't have unqualified people running out and potentially causing a different form of hazard or placing themselves in danger without recognizing it. Making sure that the equipment, that the safety equipment on hand is in proper working order, and that the people that are, supposed to be operating these things know what they're doing and in what situations they should be used. Making sure that they're placed appropriately so that they can respond to incidents quickly. We'll see some examples of that now here. Note the response time here. Fortunately, the other driver was well educated on the process and procedures. First thing he did is he ran to the back of the truck before even running to the cab. He went straight to the back of the truck, shut the electricity off to the truck, shut the power off. And then he went to check on the driver, because the last thing you want is to forget that and you go and start attending to the driver, and then you have an electrical short and it causes a fire while you're trying to get the driver out. So, in other words, these things, there's an education required in how to respond to these things. But because of the layout of this track and being careful not to have people at the end of the track that might be in harm's way and in an area where trucks are moving at very high speed. Now that caused a different problem that they're having to come from the very other end, opposite end of the track. So that presents its own problems. And so sometimes there has to be a balance there. Had the truck been on fire or the driver been incapacitated, that could have been a bad situation. That his crewman was actually the second person to respond, and it shouldn't be that way. With the proper considerations, the safety crews should have been able to be to the truck very rapidly. Nobody went to the back of the truck. Shut it off. Shut the power off.
Got transmission fluid on the headers. Got fuel leak as well.
No fire extinguishers. People just standing around staring. Most of those people that responded really were just gawking. They were not really assisting. And they could potentially have put themselves in danger or put other people in danger that couldn't get out of the way. But nobody ran up with a fire extinguisher. Nobody, ran up and hit the ignition kill, the power kill on the back of the truck. Nobody other than the cameraman recognized that there was fuel leaking and transmission leaking. That was just not a very well organized response. And that places the driver in danger. Here, there's a small fire element in the truck. It's getting larger. It's getting bigger. Now they're throwing dirt on it. Now somebody finally ran up with a functional fire extinguisher. Not the kind of response you'd like to see when the vehicle's on fire, especially not if the driver's in the vehicle. In other words, fortunately, that was not a life or death situation, but it could have been. What would have happened had that been a life or death situation? Would it have received the same response? Slightly different situation. Listen. Engine's still running. There's fuel, there's liquids pouring out of the truck. They just finally turned it off. No one ever hit the RII. The driver shut the truck off. Somebody fell asleep with an RII in their hand. A couple of people probably. And again, the crews that went to attend to the driver didn't hit the kill on the back either. I mean, I know that these might seem like minor things, but they can be major. It only takes one, right? I mean, maybe 9 times out of 10, the truck won't burst into flames. But what about the time it did? It's very important that these track personnel know how to respond to these situations. And that guy with the RI should have shut that thing off instantly. The minute that truck was over, it should have been. This idea now of, oh, I'm going to save the truck at all costs, and it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, on its roof. I'm going to hold it to the floor, and it's going to, you know, maybe it'll pull it. That's just ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, I know it might be exciting, but it's just inviting disaster. It's not an if, it's a when. So again, I just ask that, you know, that the track personnel be a little bit better educated on what they're supposed to do in these situations. This is, I usually include this, and this is not a safety issue per se. I mean, obviously it is, but it's not a safety issue that pertains to us directly. It pertains to us indirectly. And it is how you have to recognize that the media does not make a distinction. Anything that's got big tires, oversized tires, is a monster truck to the media. So when accidents happen or injuries happen or anything, or there's, you know, situations where things could have gone really, really bad, we're all lumped together. And I think that we both have to figure out suitable ways to separate ourselves from these situations, as well as maybe try to help these people recognize the dangers in these things, and how, you know, sometimes having fun can turn into a bad situation very quickly. These are just a few examples. Missed the guy sitting on the four-wheeler by inches.
Oh, shit!
Very, very lucky I walked away from that. Extremely lucky. With all the pieces that went flying off that thing, how hard would it have been for that one of those 4-link bars or something to just go right through the floorboard into the cab, or to go flying into the stands or anything like that. Everybody catch that? Literally went over the people there. That would have been, monster truck kills 10 people. And everybody, the media would be accused. Every news report would have a picture of, you know, Bigfoot or Gravedigger or something, you know, implying that they somehow had something to do with this, even though that couldn't be further from the truth. And this is an example of that exact thing. Monster truck plows through crowd. Let's watch the monster truck plow through the crowd.
It was billed as a spectacle.
There it
but quickly
goes.
turned into showground horror.
Oh my God!
a stunt car losing control at the Mount Gravatt Showground and ploughing into spectators at the Ultimate Monster Truck Show. The metal fence doing little to stop the beefed-up Holden.
Because it was at a monster truck show, it was the accident was reported as being a monster.
These machines that we use are basically.
We're the victim. You know what makes monster trucks exciting? Also, it's a double-edged sword. It also makes us the victims of unscrupulous journalists that sensationalize. I mean, monster trucks are sensational, right? They get a lot of attention anywhere they go and anywhere they're parked. So that is then turned around and it's used to grab attention for the media reports that blow these things out of proportion or associate us with situations that we had no part in whatsoever. I think it's very unfortunate. I personally am very protective of our industry. I love this industry, a great deal, and I don't like seeing things that tarnish our image. I've said this every meeting, and I say this in every interview, and it sounds arrogant, but the truth of the matter is that I'm proud of our safety record. I believe that we are the safest motorsport, bar none. And that didn't happen by accident. It's because of the work that the foresight of, Bob Chandler and a few others that put this organization together because they recognized the potential for disaster. They didn't wait for the disaster to happen and for the injuries to occur. They started developing these rules that we used for the construction of our vehicles in advance, developing the RI and all these things to prevent them from happening. Foresight, proactive action, not waiting for something to happen and then what are we going to do to stop it after the fact. So that's the end of my little rant. And I recognize that this has been heavy, so I always try to end this with a little bit of light humor, just so that before we open this for discussion a little bit, but this is another type of danger we see occasionally. All right. Well, with that, I'd like for us to open this up for a few questions.
Had to see that dog again.
Yeah. We obviously, while doing this, I haven't been able to watch the chats or the questions, but I know Paul and Scott and Denver and Tom have been watching them. So one of you want to read up maybe some of the more important questions?
Am I on here now?
Yes.
I said there's not been any real questions, just a lot of comments kind of chiming along with what we've been saying. So if anybody wants to ask any questions now, I'd suggest now would be the time. But there hasn't been any real questions throughout the process.
There's been a lot of great comments about wearing high visibility clothing. If you're part of a team, if you're part of the track personnel, part of the event staff, and you're anywhere near that performance area, yes, you need high visible clothing. That's been a lot of great comments about that. I appreciate that.
Tim had a little bit of a backstory on that. He gave us last week, I remember.
Yep, back in the if you look at old racing pictures, but you see Victory Lane or something, and there's old NASCAR pictures, or even predating NASCAR, old AMA motorcycle flat track racing. I grew up around that, but even long ago, before I got involved, when my dad was involved in all that, didn't have high vis, but they had whites. You had to have whites to be in the pits. You look at old videos and or old pictures, not videos, pictures, and you'll see everybody in the pits had white clothes on, not because they were painters, but and certainly the white stuff wasn't, the most obviously you're working on old cars or motorcycles or whatever, you're going to get dirty and you're at a dirt track, but that was the idea. They had it back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. They were doing it in the old Indianapolis 500. The pit crew men always had white on because they thought that was the most visible thing that they had. There wasn't all the high vis stuff. So yeah, that's why you'll see that in old racing history photos and stuff. They were onto this a long time ago before we came onto the scene. They recognized the importance for visibility.
I'll bring up one thing because I know this will be a little bit of a discussion here. One, or not one, I saw multiple comments about this as a result of the incident that happened last week. And there was a few, or there were a few suggestions or questions regarding backup cameras for monster trucks. And Denver has a little bit of experience with this. He's run them. So we have discussed this, but so maybe Denver can chime in a little bit with that.
Yeah, I have. I really like the backup camera in my truck. The problems that I've had is the monitors themselves don't hold up to the abuse I've went through too. The cameras are fine, but the monitors, I think they just get shaking and rattling too much. I don't know if there's like a heavy equipment monitor that's in loader equipment, things like that, that we could try and use in a truck that would hold up a lot better. But while they work, I mean, there's a real wide view. And plus, if you mount your camera a little bit farther back, you get a wider angle of view so your tires aren't blocking your visibility. But when we put ours on, I was amazed at how much it helped backing up and doing other things. You can see clear across the track. Even if you're in a parked position, you can see way across the track to if anybody's off in the distance or anything. It's really helpful.
And that's a technology we may be able to further develop. There may be ways to address some of the shortcomings if we find the right equipment that will withstand the vibration and the G forces that are, that they're subjected to. We may be able to develop a system, maybe with quick connects to where if the camera is located in a vulnerable area where it'll just be pulled off and not necessarily damaged, and it won't rip all the wiring out of it or anything. Yeah, so that is definitely an area that we need to explore. It's something we have discussed, but not in depth. I mean, at this point, we are, because the visibility within the truck is so restricted anyway, especially and it's become more so over the years. Initially, we had more conventional seating. We had, the beard racing seats and stuff where they had a headrest, but they didn't have all, the restraints on the side, and the drivers had a little more ability. They could unbuckle to back up and they could look around. But now with these new systems, drivers are pretty much locked in. They can barely turn their head. They can't very easily detach their helmet. Especially when you only have a few seconds to pit, to back into a stall, to get ready to send another truck out. There are a lot of things going on. Sometimes it's, the reality of the situation is a little more complex than what it might appear from the stands. But this is an area that we will definitely be exploring, and perhaps we will have more or better information at the next meeting.
Yeah, someone asked where I mounted my camera in the comments. I mounted my camera right underneath my reese hitch in the back, but I put a steel guard all the way around it, so I wasn't as concerned with damage to the camera. And I had 11-inch screen that I had directly over the steering column, so I could see it through my steering wheel on the top. But it was, I mean, I can't say enough how much it greatly increased, well, all your visibility to the rear, because it was like having a windshield in the back of the truck. Honestly, it was really nice.
Well, if anybody else has anything to contribute, observations, questions, comments, anything.
Marty, I have a question for you.
Okay.
As far as staging trucks on the track that are not competing? And I recognize this is venue specific, but would it be preferred to be staging non-competing trucks off the track in the pits and draw them out one at a time on an exchange, or to have them on the track?
That's very dependent on the facility itself. It's kind of one of those situations where it's not a one size fits all solution. There are venues that are conducive to that, where you have good controls of the tunnels and then there are others where it's just not logistically feasible. And there are other, I guess, other considerations that sometimes, like, you have to think that these situations through. Like, in order to do that, in some cases, what you have done is you've extended the distances that the vehicles have to traverse. So where you're addressing the concern in one area, you may potentially be introducing the potential in other areas, like in tunnels, where there tends to be, for those that are familiar with most of the arena type situations, where there are tunnels that are used for accessing, the personnel, the staff from the arena staff and all that uses these things to travel from one end of the building to the other, everything, restrooms, supplies, all these things. And they're very often, there's a lot of traffic crossing these tunnels. And they almost always will have security stationed at these points with gates that are acting as controls. But if we increase the number of those things and you start adding to the complexity, I fear that you can create an entirely different problem. So in short, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I think it's very dependent. Like I said about these guidelines, or these are not guidelines, these recommendations that we have created, they are the baseline from which event coordinators need to build upon. They need to use these as like just the very basis, and from there make adjustments to suit that particular facility. Sorry, I couldn't answer your question any better than that. It's a complex one. It's a good question because it's a complex one. Anyone else have a question?
I got one for you. Marty. I know years ago how they had how you had to be certified through testing to be just a driver, or to just be a tech official. Do you think that you'll end up seeing possibly an idea of like guides and regulations to where you can test to see if you can be certified as a track official?
This relates very closely to something that the board has been discussing for months now, for maybe 6 months. We're changing. We're definitely changing. I made vague references to this in the last meeting, or we made vague references to this. But as the industry has changed, and the complexity of how the organization operates and how it must adapt to this new paradigm, it has become apparent to us that we were assuming certain responsibilities that were really not within our control completely. And we have effectively decided, we have not, this isn't written in stone yet, but I would say we're very near coming to a decision, a permanent decision on this. But there are certain aspects where we are going to defer to the individual promoters for certain things. The MTRA historically has carried insurance because of some of the things that we were doing. And it was the single most costly item on our annual budget. And in light of not spectacular support from the independent teams, because there frankly aren't that many independent teams anymore, the organization relies on the enthusiasts and the people that are related to the industry. They may work within the industry, but they're not necessarily team owners or drivers. So we've had to make adjustments in how we can financially support this and allow it to continue into the future. And by allowing the promoters to take the responsibility for these certain aspects, it allows us to reduce the liability placed upon us. It's a very diplomatic way of, very roundabout saying that we're trying to not be responsible for things that are not directly within our control. We are happy to assist in any way we can. We go to events to assist the promoters, their staff, go through the inspection processes and make whatever observations we can. We've worked with a few promoters that are very good about sharing information. They're really good about staying on top of. They recognize that we're all in this together, that when an incident happens at one of these small shows, and even though it has nothing directly related to these larger promoters, that still affects them, because again, the media views us all as one and the same. They don't make those distinctions. So I would be hesitant to say that we would do the certification from within the organization, because that carries its own liability. But we would most definitely be willing to assist anyone that would like to go through some form of education on this. And if there's anything we can do to help the situation, we're always available to provide whatever guidance we can. Again, that was
Thank you.
sort of
I
a
appreciate that,
non-answer.
Marty. Thanks.
It was sort of a non-answer. Sorry.
It's a better answer than I got at work all day today.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have another one. As far as barriers go for that safety gap for the audiences, would it be better or preferred to invest in tarps for the safety holes?
I think it makes a better distinction of the areas that are off limits to the spectators. So from that aspect, yes. And I think it cosmetically, it looks better. I think it looks more professional than just having yellow tape, yellow caution tape or anything blocking those seats. And this is something we're going to be the event recommendations, event safety recommendations are already on the website. We will post links on our social media as well, so that everybody can review them and familiarize themselves with them. And by all means, we're open to any suggestions on additions or modifications to these things, because again, they're recommendations. They're not, it's not like the components for the trucks. These are not rules, because they're outside of our purview. But we do feel that this is something very much worth discussing, and we invite everybody's participation in this. I think we all are on equal footing. We're on this. We all have effectively the same capacity to enforce this. We're all trying to convince the powers that be to recognize these issues. Tim, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I think another good meeting. We'll everybody stay tuned to what our next one will be. We'll continue to do this again. I think this has been another really good informative one. And the thing is, as we get more information into more people's hands, and then those people go out and they say, well, I heard this, and I heard that, or I saw this, or I saw that, and they're going to think about it and they're going to pass it on. Maybe it daisy chains out there to where this information gets more out there. So I appreciate everybody attending, and well done, Marty. Thank
you. And again, I appreciate everybody coming out. You're you're showing your support for the industry, your concern. We invite your participation in any way you can. It's greatly appreciated. And with that, I think we can call it a night, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. We'll be making
Thanks, everyone.
announcements soon. Thank you. Everybody have a good night.